This is Spare Time Repair, and this is a Pioneer PD-4050 from 1987. As I've discovered previously, Pioneer CD players from this era have a common problem. Their objective lenses often fall out due to bad or insufficient adhesive. I'm not sure exactly when this problem began, but since learning about it I've avoided purchasing Pioneer machines in case the lens was no longer inside. This one was pretty inexpensive though, so I thought it was worth the risk. I also like the design of it, and it comes from a time before the company started using that weird typeface for their model numbers that I personally find quite ugly. The eBay listing for this one said that it powered on but wouldn't read discs. That certainly fits with the common lens issue, but when I tried it, the tray wouldn't open either. This may have been caused by transit damage since it arrived in a box barely bigger than the player itself, with only a thin layer of bubble wrap for protection. The tray issue should be a simple enough fix, but will that lens still be attached? This front panel is coming away on the right hand side, so looks like a clip may have broken off. There's also a strange deformation in the casing here, so maybe it's taken a blow at some point. There's nothing rattling inside, which is a little worrying, because if that lens has fallen out, I need it to still be inside. There are a couple of holes at the bottom that it could potentially have fallen out of. Well, I think I can see why the tray wasn't opening. The disc clamp has become detached, or partially detached, and this disc stabilizer is wonky as well. So that probably was transit damage. And yep, no lens. So I've just got to hope that it's stuck in here somewhere, because you can't get spares for those. Can't imagine how many of these machines have been thrown away just because of that. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with the laser output, but let's just check. Well, this is interesting. I think you saw a brief output there, but the display hasn't come on. And that was the case when I first tried this machine after unpacking it. I always test them just to verify the fault, and when I turned this one on, it appeared to be dead. Oh, now the display has come on. And now it's gone off again. There's a loose connection somewhere. So yeah, the display's on now, but if I... There you go, just moving it around a bit, it's gone off again. Maybe a cold solder joint. Right, so it's currently on. And yeah, we do have an output. This honeycomb pattern on the base plate was unique to Pioneer machines, I believe, and is apparently an anti-resonance design, but I'm not too sure about the validity of that. Here's that loose corner, and this tab is obviously broken off in here somewhere. These ribbon cables aren't socketed, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to detach the front panel completely, but let's at least remove it and try and take out the transport and see if we can locate that lens. Broken tab, should be easy enough to restick. Got 3 screws in the bottom. I think if you find an 80s or 90s Pioneer CD player listed as not being able to read discs, I think you're 90% certain that the lens has fallen out. Well, I'm just going to position it there for now. There's a lot of dirt and debris on here that needs cleaning off. I've got a couple of belts, but they look okay. We've seen the tray working. This one on the left is for the tray, and there's another one on this motor that moves the laser sled. This tray design is quite unusual. You've got this metal piece here. This plastic piece extends along there and drops the disc down. And when it's in that drop down position, the tray won't move. But when you push it in, it will. So I think I'm going to remove this stabilizer. Should just unclip. It'd be nice to remove the tray as well. Oh, just found the lens. I don't know where that dropped out from, but that's excellent news. We are definitely in business. Doesn't look like it's scratched or damaged. In fact, this laser assembly is completely separate from this part of the transport. Not seen that before. There's a lot of strange internal branding as well. On here it says ballast base. I don't know who that's bragging to. And you're not going to read this disc stabilizer text either unless you take it apart. So I'm going to remove this flat flex. And undo these 4 screws. Got an earth cable at the back as well. Pop that screw back in so I know what it's for. This cable is clipped around this plastic piece here. I've got 4 ceramic spacers keeping it away from the base plate. So I think it's this connector we need to remove. Okay, we're free. Quite a compact mechanism really. If I hadn't known this was from 1987, I would have guessed it was much later. There's that tiny belt for the laser sled, and you can see it looks a bit deformed, so I'll replace that if I've got one small enough. It's really thin though. I usually have the problem that my belts are thinner than the originals, but on this occasion I think they're going to be thicker. And this pickup wouldn't have been that straightforward to replace, because to remove it I think you'd have to take off this plate, which would involve removing the turntable and also unscrewing the motor itself. Thankfully we don't need to do that. A good clean should be sufficient. How do I remove this tray? Well, I might first try to remove this front panel. There's just a couple of screws in here. The rest is held on with clips. Oh no, there's a third screw. It's always tricky unclipping all these at the same time. And you can see where this front clip broke off right at the back there. And displays don't get much simpler than that. I will check the continuity of all those tactile switches, but first I want to get this tray out. Well, something released. So we've got a rack gear running along this side, and that's driven by these teeth here. And when the tray is closed, it just slides this along and drops the disc into place. Well, a ball bearing has dropped out, and I don't know where that came from. Probably sitting in this track. Yeah, I think you can see the line where it's run along here. And I think this is what was keeping the tray in place. And that's linked to this part here, which has its own spring, but it does need to be pressed in first. I'm just going to drop some alcohol in here and clean things up a bit. This must have been in a pretty dusty environment. In fact, it would be easier if I just removed this whole piece. Looks like there's a screw here that goes up from the underside, and I could remove this gear altogether. In fact, this is where the leaf switch is for the tray sensor. So this little post here runs in this channel here, and then at the end here it kicks it over. That just operates that switch. Just going to check if we've got good continuity. Yep. That's not quite so good, so I'll give that a quick clean. A little bit of grime in there. Quite a lot in there. Good. So here's that screw we saw from the other side. I'll make it a lot easier to clean that. And if this is the original belt, it's held up very well. Just going to put a drop of oil in this motor while I'm here. And before I go any further, I'm going to clean all these parts up and then see if we can find where that power issue is coming from. In fact, before I go hunting around for dry solder joints, I'm going to re-stick this tab to the front panel, and I'm going to use super glue to hold it in place and then put some epoxy around it. That feels like a good initial grab, and I think someone could make a lot of money if they invented a micro dispenser for this epoxy resin, because when you only need a tiny amount, it's annoying to have to mix up a large batch. And when you have an air bubble, that doesn't help. Alright, that's a full minute of mixing. I'm going to be quite generous with it because I don't think it's going to foul anything else. It says it cures in 1 hour, but that's just not true. This stuff can stay pretty tacky for several hours. And I'll keep hold of the remainder so that I've got an indication of when it's appropriately dry. So now I need to find the dry joint, if indeed that's what it is. And I suspect it's on this main board because it was happening when I was pressing down on this right hand side. But since the transformer board is easier to remove, I might as well check that first. Remove that linkage. I am unplugged, of course. Well, these joints all appear to be okay, but I think I'm going to touch them up anyway just to be sure. This little board has nothing to do with the power, so I'm going to refix that. I cleaned all the gunk off these teeth. Need to slip this on first. I'm just reusing the original belt because there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just going to clean this original grease off and re-grease it. And since it's metal on metal, I'm going to use lithium grease. Of course, I need to put the ball bearing back in. I'm not actually sure how the ball bearing stays captive, because if I just drop it in there, surely it's going to drop out when the tray is open. And the same on the rear. I'm going to look for a service manual, see if that gives advice. Well, I found the service manual and evidently the ball bearing sits in this little hole, which is logical enough, but I thought that was where this catch engaged for removing the tray. Clearly I was mistaken. That ball bearing actually pops up and down when this moves. But anyway, I need to refit the transport first. I cleaned it up as best I can, and I should replace that belt, but I just haven't got anything small enough. These are way too big. Also, it would be a nightmare to do it because the inner pulley is trapped. So instead, I'm going to apply some voltage to this motor and just see if it slides back and forth okay. Because if it does, I'm not going to worry about it. Seems to be okay. I'm going to step the voltage up a little bit. Well, I think I'll leave it for now, since it doesn't appear to be a problem. It's very easy to clean a lens when it's detached, and I assume it goes in this way up. Can't actually tell if that's level or not. Well, that feels seated correctly, but I'll test the disc read and playback before I glue it into place. I'll refit these ceramic spacers. I'm not going to reconnect the flat flex because I need to remove this PCB. I've got a few screws holding it in, including this voltage regulator at the back, the RCA sockets, and this bracket on the right. I'm going to remove this connector at the bottom. The voltage regulator's got thread lock all over it for some reason, and I can't immediately see any bad joints, but I'm going to go over it with my magnifying loupe and see what I can find. I've removed most of that blue thread lock with a combination of alcohol and acetone, and I did that because I thought that was the most likely cause of the problem, but these joints look okay. Could also be a broken trace, but again, there's no sign of that. And I did check the power cord as well, but there doesn't appear to be a problem there either. I've reflowed a few joints that may have been causing a problem, but I'm far from convinced that I've resolved it. Still, I think the only thing I can do is refit the board and give it a test. So it just hooks in these plastic clips. And I'm not going to refix everything just yet until I've had a chance to test it. The DAC, incidentally, is a Burr Brown PCM56P. There are 4 Sony chips in here as well. A couple of Pioneer ones here under the ribbon cables. So let's turn it on and see what's happening. Oh, it was on. That's so strange. And now I'm just getting nothing at all. So we've got our AC voltage coming in, that's not a problem. All the power rails are labelled, which is useful. But we've got nothing on the 5-volt rail. Well, my reflowing work seems to have made the problem even worse. Well, it's no problem with the switch. I'm going to carefully plug it back in. Well, no voltage appeared to be getting beyond the transformer, and so I thought I'd remove that in case one of the windings was broken. But as I was desoldering it, I found that the pads here are really loose. You can see this one has come off altogether. This pad isn't quite so bad, but it still looks like it's broken from here. So I think if I run jumpers from here to here and test it again, that might resolve the problem. I'm going to use this thick copper core from the inside of a coax cable. I can just cut these to length. I'm going to do all 3 because they're probably all suspect. And I'm just going to clean the flux off there and cover those connections with Kapton tape just to make sure we don't get any shorts with the bottom case. I don't think we would. I think it's suspended high enough off the bottom, but might as well be safe. Well, before I screw it all down again, let's test it out. Yes. Great, so we can start reassembling. I was going to check these buttons, wasn't I? Well, that one's not great. Well, I think they do need servicing. I'm not going to show that on camera because I've done it in previous videos and it's not very exciting. I mean, I've already tested the open-close button and it was working, but it makes sense to service them now I've got it open. Alright, those buttons have all been serviced and are now working perfectly, so it's time to get this thing back together. Just want to see if alcohol will get rid of this red paint mark. Yeah, looks like it's slowly coming off. There we go. Now I need to reroute this cable. Am I doing this in the right order, or did I need to put the tray in first? No, that's okay. So hopefully my repaired tab here works. Feels pretty solid. I think this clamp goes on first. Well, after all that work, will it actually read a disc? I need more 1987 CDs, so it's going to have to be REM again. What have I done wrong there? I think I should have refitted the clamp when the tray is in the open position, because now it's not lifting when the tray tries to open. So this lever down here that I was moving back and forth should actually be moved with the clamp, because this post here should slot in there. Right, because now it's in the upright position. Yeah, and then that lowers it down. Right, let's try that again. Okay, take two. Well, that was very noisy, but it has read the disc. Right, well it's obviously working, but the disc isn't spinning freely. It's scuffing on something. Actually, I just moved the player and it's okay now. I think the player was just a bit warped because it wasn't sitting level, but that is now pretty quiet. Well, having just refitted the clamp, I need to remove it again to glue the lens into place. And it may surprise you, but I'm going to use some wood glue. And the reason is I don't want to use super glue because of the fumes. It could possibly affect the optics. And I think the wood glue will be perfectly strong enough. And it's also reversible if for some reason I wanted to take the lens out again in future. Trouble is it's recessed a bit. It'd be nice if I could take this shroud off, but I'm not sure if I can. Maybe I should remove it again and apply the glue first. Shouldn't take much. Right, I think that's seated properly, and because the adhesive is water-based, it shouldn't do any harm to the plastic. This player likes to be flat. I'm just going to take it off the blue mat, because this mat has these big ridges in that just won't let it sit flat. Seemed to take longer to read the disc that time. Well, I've got it hooked up to the oscilloscope, and you can see we've got a pretty weak eye pattern. That does not look very clear. So I'm going to do some adjustments and see if I can improve that. Well, before I make any adjustments, I'm going to check this lens, because it might just be that I've not seated it properly, because I'm sure it was reading a disc faster before I put the glue on. This is the advantage of using the PVA, because it should be easier to remove than it would have been otherwise. Yeah, I think putting glue into the recess was a mistake, because it was just stopping it from sitting flush. Need to be very careful not to drop any residue inside that hole, because that could really mess up the optics. I think I've cleaned off all the residue. So let's drop this back in. So I think I am going to have to get the position right and then apply some glue afterwards, because once I've got it right, I don't want to take it out again. I just wish I didn't have to refit this clamp in between every attempt. Well, after reseating that lens a couple of times, it's now reading a disc a lot faster. So I think we're now back to where we should be. Also, when I hook it up to the scope, that eye pattern is looking a lot better. In fact, it's looking good enough that I don't think it needs any further adjustment. And that's just as well, because I downloaded 3 separate service manuals for this player, and not one of them tells you how to perform adjustments. All these potentiometers are unlabelled. They just say VR7, VR5, VR2, so I wouldn't know which one to adjust anyway. And hiding behind this ribbon cable is another tactile button on the main PCB, and next to that it says test. But again, there's nothing in the service manual that explains what that does. Presumably it puts it into test mode for servicing, but I can't use it if I don't know what I'm doing. So all that remains is to stick the lens in, and I'm still going to use the PVA, but I'm going to apply it to the outside with this little tool I made. It's just a bent pin on a toothpick, which is pretty useful for getting into small places. Even with a pin, it's really hard to get it in there. And I think that should do it. Perhaps I was wrong to worry about this Pioneer. I now feel that unless somebody has deliberately removed the lens from inside the case, it's very likely to still be in there if you decide to purchase one of these units with a no disc read fault. I also think the success rate for a lens reseating repair is very high, as long as you're careful to get it completely level. The player itself is nothing special, and certainly suffers from that rudimentary display. The only indication of time it gives is showing which minute of the track you're on during a manual search. But any working player is better than a broken one, and this unit seems set to serve for a few years yet. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.